The entire world monetary system under a fiat currency standard can be summed up in just 6 letters. IOU YOU. IOU you. A piece of your future lifetime has been sold off into enslavement. In the case of a 30-year bond, it's for the next 30 years, so your children and grandchildren are going to be paying the bill for our currency that is in circulation right now. You've just talked about some of the differences between currency and money. Money requires a lot of time and effort to come into existence. It has value because a prospector has to find a claim, somebody has to turn that claim into a mine, and it takes somewhere between 7 and 20 years today, and potentially billions of dollars to do that. And then you have to mine the ore, and the ore, you've got to move 30 tons of dirt to get 1 ounce of gold on the average. Then that has to be refined and minted into bars. Now, under the old gold standard, the classical gold standard and the gold standard that still existed while the Federal Reserve was corrupting it after 1913, when this bill was created in 1922, this is a picture, this is the U.S. Treasury, and they print up that bill right there, and then they use that. Now this looks like a fraud. They print up a bill and they buy that gold from the miner. But it's not a fraud. Wait a second. They then send that gold to the U.S. Mint. It's minted into coins, and the coins back that currency that's in circulation, those claim checks. They both have value because it was a 100% reserve ratio. And the reason this coin is out in circulation is somebody took this and they cashed it in and traded it for the gold coin that backed it up. So that was a currency that truly was backed by money, and they both contained the value of all of the time and effort put in to finding, mining, refining, and minting that gold coin. Now, if you wanted to buy a house under the old gold standard, you had to save if it's $1 million house, you needed 500 gold coins, or you had to borrow them. The value they contained was the prospecting, mining, refining, and minting into a gold coin, and that equaled the chopping down the trees, turning them into lumber, digging up all the cement and iron ore and copper ore to be able to make the plumbing and the wiring, and then paying a bunch of to hammer that thing together. Plus, so it's the value of the materials and all of that time and effort. And the value of the gold was all of that effort that was put into it. The value of the house was all of that effort that was put into it. And when you made the purchase of that house, it was a fair, equitable, honest exchange. You were trading something of value for something of equal value, and that's what you do when you use money. Let's go to Money Creation in the Modern Economy. It's the quarterly bulletin from 2014 from the Bank of England. Because for decades and decades and decades, we have all been lied to. We've all heard this fractional reserve currency creation for bank credit, right? Where you deposit $100 and the bank keeps 10%. I've got Hidden Secrets of Money, episode 4. It's got 10 million views. And it's wrong when it comes to bank credit creation. All the textbooks are wrong. Milton Friedman was wrong. All the economists that talk about this. This is not the way bank credit, which is 90% of the currency supply, comes into existence. And it was disclosed in this paper, the way they do it. How did they keep this hidden for so many decades? And so fractional reserve lending the fraction is a fiction. It does not exist. This is a quote. Broad money is made up of bank deposits, essentially IOUs from banks, and currency, IOUs from the central bank. Reserves are an IOU from the central bank. Broad money is the currency that we get to use. It's the currency we get to touch and use, see and touch. Reserves the banks call them narrow money. It's narrow currency. It is only used by the banks and the central bank. It's an entirely separate monetary system. And so you've got three forms of fiat currency in existence: IOUs, IOUs, and IOUs. And I will show you later that it's backed by IOUs. And so that's the main difference between currency and money. Now, how does the process work that creates cash in circulation, the stuff that's in your wallets and purses? Your bank, I'm going to go back here. Your bank is low on vault cash, and payday is coming up, and they need a bunch of vault cash quick. They call up the Federal Reserve and they say, hey, I need $1 billion of cash right away. So print it up and send some to me. The Fed says, well, I can't do that. I've got a balance sheet, and the balance sheet has to balance. Assets have to equal liabilities. So if I print it up, that's my liability. What asset do you have to offer me? The bank says, well, I've got $1 billion worth of U.S. Treasuries. The Federal Reserve goes, okay, that will work, and they imagine $1 billion into existence that did not exist the second before. They have the the Bureau of Engraving print up a bunch of new $100 bills, and they buy that bond from the bank. Now, when the bank pays out that cash to people on payday, it enters circulation. The Federal Reserve committed a fraud when they imagined currency into existence. So that's fraud. They are counterfeiting. When the bank pays that out, it goes into circulation, and these empty units of currency that had no purchasing power because they were just a figment of somebody's imagination go out into circulation, and they get their purchasing power by stealing a microscopic amount from every other unit of currency in circulation. So that is theft. So now you have fraud and theft. But what backs those dollars that the Fed created? That bond. What is a U.S. Treasury? The Treasury needs to borrow $1 billion, $1 trillion, it doesn't matter. They create an IOU called a bond. So this is the IOU that backs up the three IOUs that are our currency. And this IOU says, loan me $1 trillion today, and I promise over a 30-year period I'm going to pay you back that $1 trillion plus another $1 trillion worth of interest. Where does that principal and interest to pay back the investor come from? It comes from all of you, your future taxes. This is a certificate of your enslavement and the enslavement of your children and your grandchildren for the next 30 years. That's what a U.S. Treasury is. So now you have fraud, theft, and enslavement. That's what currency does. Money does not do that. Money is called, gold and silver are called honest money. So the process, whenever a bank makes a loan, it simultaneously creates a matching deposit in the borrower's bank account, thereby creating new money. Banks do not loan out deposits. Deposits are a liability. They can't loan their liability. Banks create currency by creating an asset first, and then you sign it, the mortgage document. The currency is imagined into your bank account, and then it goes out into circulation. So it's a fraud when the bank creates it, and it's theft when it goes into circulation. This is the process. You want to buy a house. You find a house that you want to buy. So you go to your bank, and you say to the bank, I want to borrow $1 million because I need to buy this house. The bank looks at you, says, yes, your credit's good. They look at the house, they go, well, your collateral is worth more than $1 million. And the bank imagines $1 million into existence, and then the bank buys that house with the $1 million, not you. The bank owns it for the next 30 years, and then you pay the seller, and that currency is now out in circulation. And you, for the next 30 years, are stuck in a rent-to-own scheme where the bank is going to rent it to you, and you're going to pay twice the amount that the bank paid for the house. And if you don't make that final payment, they take the house. Where did the purchasing power come from? It came from everybody holding any currency at all. It comes in the form of rising prices, shrinking the public's purchasing power. So that's where all bank credit comes from. This is 9 out of every $10 in the United States. So, under that system, if you're going to buy a house, and the value of the house is still the value of all of that time and effort put into it, but the value of the currency, the bank or the Federal Reserve imagined them into existence, committing a fraud. The people that are going to pay the price is the general population, and then the bank gets to buy that house. And again, another fraud and theft are committed, because in this transaction, the bank purchased something of very high value for nothing, something that was imaginary. So, what backs that currency in circulation? Another IOU. You sign a mortgage, you owe the bank. This is the IOU that backs all of the bank credit. Either your auto loan, when you charge on a credit card, you're obligated to pay that back. And when you take out a mortgage, you're obligated to pay that back. Miss your final payment, and you lose your collateral, the house. And so the currency in your pocket is backed by 30 years of your enslavement, your permanent indentured servitude. The house is backed by a 30-year mortgage. Now, debt is a very powerful tool if you're using it for a cash flow investment or if you're using it to grow your business. But if you're just using it for a liability, and this is what Robert taught me years ago, if you're using it for a house that you're living in, that house is a liability, and you are chained to that mortgage for the next 30 years. It's going to steal a percentage of your lifetime. Now, the entire world monetary system under a fiat currency standard can be summed up in just 6 letters. IOU YOU. IOU you. A piece of your future lifetime has been sold off into enslavement. In the case of a 30-year bond, it's for the next 30 years, so your children and grandchildren are going to be paying the bill for our currency that is in circulation right now. Now, I'd like you to turn to each other and talk about that for a couple of minutes. And stop. So, none of this